Mr. Rose.
Here.
Mr. Rose represents the Roberts District. Ms. Leverins.
Here, sorry.
That's okay.
She must have muted herself.
I heard it. Ms. Leverins is an at-large member and is this year's vice chair. In accordance with the Planning Commission's adopted policy, Ms. Leverins is participating remotely from her home this evening due to a medical condition that prevents physical attendance. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman represents the Berkeley District. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member. In accordance with the Planning Commission's adopted policy, Mr. O'Connor is participating remotely from his home this evening due to a medical condition that prevents physical attendance. Mr. Croft.
Here.
Mr. Croft represents the Powhatan District and is this year's chair. I'm Paul Holt, Director of Community Development and Planning for the county. Joining us virtually this evening is Mr. Max Halavin, our Deputy County Attorney, and also in attendance tonight is Mr. John Carnifex, our Acting Assistant County Administrator. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. And the first item on our meeting agenda this evening is the annual organizational meeting, where we elect the chair and the vice chair for the coming year starting April 1st. What we'll do is I'll take a nomination for chair, a single nomination, and we'll do a voice vote. And if that person has the support, we won't go to any other nominations. So on that note, do I have a nomination for chair?
Yes, this is
Chairman,
Julie.
I'd like to nominate Jack. Oh, I couldn't hear.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you both. We have a nomination for Mr. Haldeman as the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the vice chair position, and may I have a nomination for vice chair?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Tim O'Connor for vice chair next year.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. I guess that's what Mr.
I don't teach you to miss a meeting, Tim.
Congratulations to Mr. Haldeman and Mr. O'Connor. Next item on the organizational meeting is the proposed calendar for 2021-2022. Mr. Holt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. As mentioned at our last meeting, you have before you our proposed calendar. Did not receive any recommendations or suggestions for any edits, so there has not been any change to the calendar in your package tonight versus what we presented a couple of weeks back. With that, staff recommends approval of the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Is there any discussion, or may I have a motion to approve the calendar?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Knoll. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. We now move into the public comment period. This is for individuals who want to make a comment on items not subject to a public hearing. So I will officially open the public comment period, and seeing and hearing no one, I will close the public comment period. And we'll now turn to the one public hearing item on the agenda, the FY 2022, FY 2026 Capital Improvement Program Review. Good evening, Ms. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. After a series of meetings to discuss and evaluate this year's capital improvement program requests, the Policy Committee is forwarding its recommendations for the FY 22 through FY 25 CIP for your consideration. This year, a total of 25 projects were submitted, 19 from county departments, 2 from the Williamsburg Regional Library, and 4 from the Williamsburg-James City County Schools. Of the 25 projects submitted, 16 county projects and 3 school projects were included in the previous 5-year CIP budget. Committee members used a standardized set of ranking criteria to prioritize each application. This is provided in your packets for reference. Individual committee member scores were then averaged to generate the final project score and ranking. On the screen is the Policy Committee's final project rankings in order of priority. At its March 2nd meeting, the committee voted unanimously to forward these priorities to serve as a recommendation to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of these priorities to the Board of Supervisors for consideration during the budget process. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. Any questions for staff?
I have two, if I may. The library, it's my same question from last year, I guess, is I just don't know how to make a decision. And by the way, I have no objection with the rankings at all. I plan to support them. It's not exactly the way I would have done it. It never is, but it's fine. But I don't know, if we don't know, if we're going to build a second one or enlarge the existing one in Williamsburg, or where it would be if we do build another one, a third one, it's really hard to make a decision on any kind of a capital appropriation for it, I think. And the second question I have is, that wasn't a question so much as a musing, I guess, but is cost sharing with a capital project like this. We both Williamsburg people and James City County people use both libraries, and would presumably use a third one if we built one. And we share the capital costs of new schools and so forth. Why isn't there if it's in Williamsburg, only Williamsburg would pay for it, and if it's in James City County, only James City County residents would pay for it? I'm not clear on that.
I'm not sure. I think that's just the way the discussions have been, depending on the location. I mean, I can try to get some additional information.
Well, if I plan to vote for it anyways, but it would be nice if they could make a decision on what they're going to do before we have to make a decision on how to pay for it. So anyway, and the other thing, the open space match, I'm just sorry we're waiting for fiscal year 23. It'd be nice to get it in this year, but that's it for me.
Any other questions or any other questions for staff, I should say? Thank you, Ms. Costello. I'll now open the public hearing. Mr. Holt, did we receive any emails or other types of communication from the public?
No, sir, not for this item.
Okay, all right, thank you. And seeing and hearing no one, I will close the public hearing and turn to the commission for discussion or a motion on the CIP list. Mr. Polster.
I think everybody had a chance to see Terry's report and the discussion that she had in here in the library piece. And as the policy committee discussed that, one of the things that we wanted to recommend to the Planning Commission was that language would be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors so that they can understand some of the same concerns that all of us had that Jack expressed. The piece on the cost sharing was kind of like, yeah, why isn't it that way? I never really quite understood that, but this thing was so complicated that I was happy that at least you knew what A and B was, what the conditions were, et cetera. I know that with the operating costs, if there was a consolidated library so that there were only two, that the operating costs for that was zero just about, because it all transferred over. But the capital cost piece, and of course, I guess the other thing that's a little bit of a puzzle is that we could end up with 3 libraries and then have an increased set of costs for operation for it. When it really came down to it, and Terry did a great job, at least I think for the board to be able to understand what the dilemmas were and how confounded we were kind of on the thing for the second year, was this idea that as I got to talking with some of the staff about this and with the librarian that presented, when they did their survey 2 years ago, they didn't really ask anybody, what was your preference about which one? And so there's a recommendation here that says, if you come back here, at least you ought to have gone out to your patrons, your library patrons, and got an opinion on whether it was A or B or 3 or 2 or whatever, without regard to the cost, to tell you the truth, for it. It's what is it? Because they did a great job by showing you where all their patrons were relative to the Norge and to the Williamsburg Library, and of course rationalized the idea of their mobile system. The other suggestion that Terry put in here, which I thought is something else that they may want to consider, is branch libraries. I mean, having, a brand new library consolidated is not necessarily the optimal solution for the growing population that we're going to have within the county over the next, 20 years that we've seen. So we do have an underserved communities in the upper and the lower end of the county. My suggestion was, why not look at the branch in combination with the school libraries for given some of the curriculum. But anyhow, all of that is in there for the board to take a look at. So I'd like to be able to see that go forward so they see that explanation and they can decide themselves.
I think the cover memo is very helpful, that brings out those types of issues that you and Mr. Haldeman both mentioned, and that gives the board a little bit more of a background when they're reviewing the rankings, and maybe get a better understanding for some of the discussions that went in at the policy level and the planning commission level. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? In that case, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the CIP list as presented by staff, with the stipulation of adding that descriptive paragraph on the library in the cover memo that goes forward to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Polster. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Knoll. Mr. Rose.
Aye.
Ms. Leverance.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman. Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
And Mr. Crow.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Planning Commission discussion and requests. I just have one comment that I'd like to make, and I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners as well as Mr. Holt and his staff for the incredible support that I've been provided as chair over the coming year, and speaking for the commission, that all of the commissioners have been given by staff to work around obviously conditions that we haven't seen in over 100 years in this country. So thank you to my colleagues, and thank you to Mr. Holt and your staff very much. Any other discussion or request items from commissioners? In that case, the next item is adjournment, and if I may have a motion to adjourn to the Planning Commission Working Group meeting at 4 p.m. on Monday, March 22nd. Yes.
This is Julie. So move.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Leverance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all very much.